It was a bright Monday morning when she left the house, dressed in her usual calm and graceful way. Her gray shawl was wrapped neatly around her shoulders and her small suitcase rolled smoothly behind her. She wasn't in a rush. She never rushed. That was just how she carried herself, steady, peaceful, and always polite. She was heading to the airport on her way to visit her grandchildren on the West Coast. Her son had insisted on booking the ticket himself. "Mom, I got it," he had said on the phone. "Just sit back, relax, and enjoy the ride." She didn't ask for details. She trusted him. What she didn't know, however, was that her son had done more than just book her a regular seat. He had gone the extra mile, something he often did. He had surprised her with a first-class ticket. She had never flown first class before. Not once in her life. In fact, she rarely even traveled by air unless it was absolutely necessary. She preferred to stay close to home. But this time was different. She was going to see her grandchildren, and her son wanted her to travel in comfort. The airport was busy as usual, filled with the sounds of rolling bags, quiet announcements over the speaker, and the occasional laugh or cry of a child. She moved slowly through the terminal, carefully following the signs, asking for help when she needed it. Her voice was soft but clear. Her words were always polite. She finally reached the gate. The boarding area was already filling up. She found a seat in the corner and waited patiently, holding her boarding pass in her hand. She looked down at it and read the words, "First class, seat 2A." A small smile appeared on her face. She had never sat in the front of the plane before. Her usual seat was somewhere in the back, near the bathrooms, sometimes squeezed between strangers who barely said hello, but not this time. As the airline staff prepared to start boarding, she slowly stood up and walked toward the gate, joining the short line of first-class passengers. She didn't push. She didn't rush. She simply waited her turn. When it was her time to hand over the boarding pass, the gate agent took one look at it, then looked up at her confused. "Ma'am, this is a first-class ticket," the agent said, as if there must have been a mistake. The woman nodded gently. "Yes, that's what it says." The agent hesitated, glancing at her again. "Are you sure this is your ticket?" "Yes, my son booked it for me," she answered. Another staff member was called over. He glanced at the ticket, then at her. He didn't say much, but his face said everything. The look wasn't angry, just uncertain, almost doubtful, as if someone like her couldn't possibly belong in that part of the plane. She stood there quietly, unsure of what to say next. She didn't want to cause a scene. That wasn't her way. She had been raised to be respectful. She had taught her children to be respectful too. So she simply stood there waiting, still holding her bag, still hoping it was all just a misunderstanding. But time kept ticking. People kept boarding, and she was still standing there. At one point, she was gently pulled aside, told to just wait here for a moment. She nodded. She didn't argue. She sat down near the desk and watched other passengers walk by. Well-dressed men in suits, women in heels and expensive coats. One of them even looked at her with a puzzled expression, as if wondering why she was sitting so close to the first-class gate. She didn't know what else to do. She checked her ticket again. It still said seat 2A. She had no doubt it was correct. She had raised her son right, and he had always looked out for her, and she knew he wouldn't make a mistake. But the staff still hadn't let her board. They hadn't said she couldn't, but they also hadn't said she could. They just kept talking quietly to each other, whispering things she couldn't hear, glancing at her now and then. She could feel it in the air, that heavy, uncomfortable feeling that comes when people are too afraid to say what they're really thinking. She didn't want to cry, but her chest felt tight. It wasn't about the seat. It wasn't about flying first class. It was the feeling of being seen, but not seen fully. Not respected. She remembered moments like this from her younger years. Times when she had walked into a store and been ignored. Times when she had spoken up in a meeting and been talked over. Times when she had worked twice as hard for half the recognition. She had faced all of it with quiet strength. She never asked for special treatment. But she had always hoped for fairness. Now at this age, on this day, she was facing that same familiar feeling. Again. The boarding announcement continued. Group 1 now boarding. First-class passengers welcome aboard. She was still waiting, and just as she was about to ask one more time, to quietly, respectfully say, "Is something wrong with my ticket?" Something unexpected happened. A voice spoke out behind the gate counter. It wasn't loud. It wasn't angry, but it was confident, calm, and familiar. "Is there a problem with this passenger's seat?" Heads turned. The staff looked up, and so did she, because that voice belonged to someone she knew very well. It was her son. She hadn't known he would be at the airport. She hadn't seen him in weeks. But here he was, standing tall, dressed sharply in a dark blue suit, his ID badge clipped neatly to his chest. His tone was professional, but there was something in his eyes, a quiet fire. He stepped forward, looking directly at the gate agents. "I believe she's on the list," he said, holding up his phone. "She's exactly where she's supposed to be." The staff suddenly changed. Their expressions shifted. Their eyes widened a little. One of them tried to explain, stuttering a few words about a mix-up, about just needing to double-check. But her son wasn't interested in excuses. "She's not just a passenger," he said, this time more firmly. "She's my mother." He paused, then added something even more surprising, something that left the whole gate silent for a moment. "And for the record, I run this airline." There was a silence in the air, the kind that feels heavy, like time had paused for a few seconds. The staff at the gate didn't seem to know what to say. Their hands froze, the voices stopped, and their eyes all turned toward the man standing calmly behind the counter. The man in the sharp blue suit, the confident posture, and a voice that clearly carried weight. The woman sitting quietly in the waiting chair looked up too. Her son was here, right there in front of her, and she hadn't even known. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. His presence alone was enough to shift the energy in the room. You could tell that he wasn't just someone passing through. He was someone important, but more than that, you could feel he was someone who cared, not just about the business, but about people, especially her. The airline staff looked unsure what to do next. One of the gate agents finally spoke, trying to explain. "We were just verifying the ticket. There was a little confusion with the boarding group, and Her son didn't let the sentence finish. "There's no confusion," he said gently, but firmly. "She has a first-class ticket. It's valid. It was booked directly through our system." His eyes didn't waver. He wasn't being rude. He wasn't causing a scene, but he was clear. And you could tell, this was someone who had dealt with far bigger situations than this. "This is my mother," he said again. "She's a first-class passenger just like everyone else." He didn't mention titles. He didn't flash his badge. But then, just as one of the younger staff members tried to ask, "Sir, may I ask who you are?" he answered in a way that made the entire gate freeze. "I'm the CEO," he said simply. "I run this airline." That moment hit hard. You could feel the shift in the room. The staff went quiet. A couple of passengers who were already in line turned around, surprised. Others who were sitting nearby looked up from their phones. And she, the mother who had been sitting patiently all along, sat with her hands folded in her lap, quietly looking at her son, her eyes softened. Not in surprise, but in pride, because she already knew who her son was. Not just the title or the role, but who he was deep down, the man he had grown into, the boy she had raised, and yet even she hadn't known that he was that high up. For a moment she didn't move. She didn't even speak. She just looked at him. And in that look a whole story lived, one of long nights, hard work, quiet sacrifices, and years of giving more than she ever asked for in return. The staff, now realizing the situation, began to adjust quickly. Apologies were whispered. One of them offered to carry her bag. Another stepped forward with a fresh bottle of water. Smiles appeared, nervous ones, and one agent gently gestured toward the gate. "This way, ma'am. We'll take you to your seat now." But she didn't move just yet. Instead, she stood slowly with grace and calm and looked at her son. "You didn't have to come all the way here," she said in a low voice, almost a whisper. "You're a busy man." He smiled, stepping toward her, then gently took her hand. "You raised me to always show up for the people I love," he said. So here I am. There was nothing more to say after that. Not really, because those few words held so much. She walked beside him toward the gate. The staff stepped aside. No more confusion, no more waiting, just quiet respect. As they reached the plane entrance, he didn't just wave goodbye and turn around. No, he walked her all the way in, helped her with her coat, made sure her small carry-on was properly stored, and even spoke to the lead flight attendant himself. "This is my mother," he told her. "Please take good care of her." The flight attendant smiled warmly and nodded. "Absolutely, sir. We'll make sure she's comfortable." He leaned down, kissed his mother gently on the forehead, and said, "I'll call you when you land." She nodded slowly, her eyes still misty. "Thank you, son, for everything." He gave her one last smile, then stepped off the plane and walked back into the terminal. The plane door closed behind him. The sound was soft, but the meaning behind it was big. She was on her way, in her seat, seat 2A, just like the ticket said. She looked out the window, watching the ground crew moving, bags being loaded, and people walking by. Everything looked the same as always. But inside her, something felt different. She had always been proud of her son, from the time he was little, bringing home good grades, helping neighbors carry groceries, or spending hours reading books instead of playing outside. He was focused even as a child, thoughtful, kind, but also determined. She remembered when he got his first job in the airline industry. He had started at the bottom, entry level, pushing papers, answering phones, doing night shifts. He never complained, not even once, and he always said the same thing: "I'm learning. This is all part of the process," and now here he was, running the very company he once interned for. But the most powerful part of it all wasn't his title. It wasn't the job. It wasn't even the fact that he had reached the top. It was how he did it, with humility, with respect, and most of all, without ever forgetting where he came from. She sat quietly in her seat as the plane began to taxi. The hum of the engines filled the air. The flight attendant came by, offered her a drink, and asked if she needed anything. She smiled and said, "No, thank you. I'm just fine," because at that moment, she really was fine, comfortable, seen, not because of the seat she was in, but because her son had reminded her, and everyone around her, that respect isn't about money, clothes, or status. It's about showing up. It's about standing up when it counts, and it's about never, ever forgetting the people who helped you rise. As the plane lifted into the sky, she closed her eyes for a moment, letting the memories wash over her. All the years, all the quiet moments, all the times she had wondered if her sacrifices had been worth it. Now she knew. Yes, they were. Every single one. After settling into her seat, the mother looked around quietly. The first-class cabin was different from what she was used to. The seats were wider and softer, and there was plenty of legroom. The small tray tables were polished, and the windows looked bigger somehow. She noticed the soft hum of the plane's systems and the gentle voice of the flight attendant welcoming her aboard. But it wasn't the luxury that caught her attention. It was the feeling that she belonged here. A feeling she hadn't expected to have. Her thoughts drifted back to all the flights she had taken before. Most of them were in the back of the plane, squeezed between strangers, sometimes barely able to stretch her legs. The noise was louder, the seats smaller, and the attention from the staff less warm. She never complained. It was just how things were, or so she thought. Now, as she looked at the friendly faces of the attendants, offering her water and snacks with genuine smiles, she felt something new. A sense of dignity, a quiet pride. She thought about her son again, how he had risen through the ranks in a company she barely understood, working late nights and weekends. She knew it had not been easy. She remembered the phone calls when he sounded tired but still hopeful. The moments when he needed her advice or just a comforting voice. And she gave him everything she had: time, support, love. And now, sitting here, she realized that all those years had led to this moment. Not just a first-class seat on a plane, but the recognition of a life well lived, a hard-earned success, and a family bond that no one could break. As the plane began to taxi down the runway, the captain's voice came through the speakers, welcoming passengers on board and reminding everyone to fasten their seatbelts. The plane sped up, and soon they were lifting off into the sky. Looking out the window, she saw the city shrinking below her. Streets, buildings, cars, all becoming tiny. The familiar world she had known for so long was getting smaller, while new possibilities stretched out in front of her. A little boy seated nearby looked over and smiled. She smiled back. It was a simple moment, but it felt warm. She was surrounded by strangers, yet for the first time in a long time, she felt comfortable and included. The flight attendant came by again with a menu. "Would you like to see what we're serving today?" She asked kindly. "Yes, please," she replied softly. She studied the options: fresh salads, warm soups, grilled chicken, and fish dishes. It was far beyond the usual airline meals she had seen. She felt a little shy ordering something so fancy, but decided to try the soup and the grilled chicken. The attendant smiled and wrote down the order. While waiting, she pulled out a small photo from her purse. It was a picture of her son when he was a child, wearing a tiny pilot's hat and grinning widely. She showed it to the flight attendant. "That's a lovely picture," the attendant said. "He must be very proud of you." She nodded. "He is. And I am proud of him too." The rest of the flight passed quietly, filled with little moments of kindness from the crew and small conversations with fellow passengers. No one treated her like she didn't belong. No one looked past her or doubted her place. She thought about all the other women like her, women who had worked hard, raised families, and faced countless challenges. Women who had been overlooked or underestimated. She felt a quiet hope that maybe things were changing, slowly but surely. When the plane finally landed, she felt a gentle excitement. Her grandchildren were waiting for her, and she couldn't wait to hug them, to hear their stories, and to spend time together. As she gathered her things to leave, the flight attendant came over one last time. "It was a pleasure having you on board," she said warmly. "If you ever need anything, just ask." "Thank you," she replied. "Thank you for making this trip so special." Walking off the plane, she felt a lightness in her step. She had flown many times before, but this flight was different. It was a journey not just across the country, but into a new chapter of her life. Outside the airport, the bright sun warmed her face. Her son was waiting for her, his smile wide and welcoming. They embraced, and in that hug was everything: love, respect, and a promise that no matter where life took them, they would always stand together. This was more than just a flight. It was a reminder that every person deserves to be seen, heard, and valued. And for her, that was the greatest journey of all. As the plane touched down and the passengers began to gather their belongings, the mother felt a calm excitement rising inside her. The journey she had just taken was not only about moving from one place to another. It was about something deeper, a change in how she saw herself and how the world might see her too. Her thoughts drifted back to the moment when her son had stepped in at the gate. How calm he had been, yet how powerful his words were. "I run this airline." Those simple words had changed everything in an instant. The confusion, the doubt, and the hesitation of the staff all melted away as soon as he spoke. It was like his presence carried a quiet authority that no one dared challenge. She had watched the faces of the airline employees shift from uncertainty to respect. It was not because they suddenly saw her differently as a person, but because they realized who her son was and what he represented. But to her, it was more than just a family connection or a job title. It was proof of something she had always believed in: the power of hard work, perseverance, and dignity. As she gathered her belongings, she noticed the subtle kindness around her. The flight attendant smiled warmly. The passengers nodded politely. The man who had questioned her ticket earlier now offered a respectful thank you as she passed by. It was as if the whole plane had silently recognized her value. Walking down the aisle, she felt a mixture of emotions: relief, pride, and a gentle sadness. She thought of all the years when she had quietly faced disrespect and doubt, times when she was overlooked or treated unfairly. But now, sitting in that first-class seat, cared for and acknowledged, she felt something like healing. Outside the airport, the late afternoon sun warmed the pavement, casting long shadows that stretched across the parking lot. She took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling the cool breeze on her face. There, waiting for her, was her son. He stood tall and steady, eyes bright with happiness. When he saw her, his face lit up with a smile that reached his eyes, the smile of a son who deeply loved and respected his mother. They hugged, a warm and lasting embrace that said more than words ever could. It was a moment full of love, gratitude, and understanding. In his arms, she felt safe and honored. As they walked toward the car, her son held her hand gently. They didn't rush. Instead, they took their time, enjoying the quiet comfort of simply being together. During the ride home, They talked softly about small things, the weather, the children, the plans for the upcoming week. But beneath those simple words lay a stronger bond, one built on years of shared struggle and success. She listened as he spoke about his work, the challenges of running a large company, and the importance of treating people fairly. She smiled quietly, proud of the man he had become, not just for his achievements but for his kindness and humility. Later that evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they sat together with the grandchildren, sharing stories and laughter. The house was filled with warmth, joy, and a sense of belonging. For the mother, this was more than a visit. It was a celebration of life's journey, of sacrifices made, dreams pursued, and love passed down through generations. She thought about the future, hopeful and confident that no matter what challenges might come, she and her family would face them together. And in that moment, surrounded by those she loved, she knew she had finally arrived, not just on a plane, but in a place of peace, respect, and true happiness. The next few days were filled with quiet moments and simple joys. The mother was finally home with her family, surrounded by the laughter of her grandchildren and the comforting presence of her son. After so many years of hard work and sacrifice, she felt a deep sense of peace. But beneath the calm surface, there was also a powerful story unfolding, one that was about more than just family. It was about respect, about breaking down walls, and about the quiet strength that comes from standing tall in the face of doubt. Her son had invited her not just to visit, but to spend time getting to know the company he led. It was a world she had never imagined entering, the world of airplanes, business meetings, and decisions that affected thousands of people every day. On the second day of her visit, she found herself in a sleek office looking out at the busy city below. The walls were lined with pictures of airplanes, smiling employees, and milestones in the company's history. Her son was there, explaining things in a way that made the complicated feel simple. He spoke about the challenges the company faced, the tough competition, the need to stay safe, and the importance of treating customers with respect. She listened carefully, nodding quietly. It was clear to her that he wasn't just focused on profits or numbers. He cared deeply about the people, the passengers, the crew, and the employees who made everything work. Later, they walked through the offices and she met some of the employees. She was struck by how warmly they greeted her, showing respect and kindness. Some of them knew her son well, and they spoke about his leadership with admiration. It made her proud, but also reminded her of all the hard work it had taken to get here. As they moved through the company's different departments, she saw the behind-the-scenes work, the planning, the communication, and the teamwork that kept the planes flying safely and on time. Her son pointed to a group of young women working at their desks. "They're some of our best team members," he said. "We're committed to creating opportunities for everyone, no matter where they come from." She smiled. That was something she had always believed in, the power of giving people a chance to succeed. After the tour, they sat down for lunch in a small cafeteria, filled with chatter and the smell of fresh food. The atmosphere was relaxed but focused. People were enjoying their meals, sharing stories, and working together. She watched as her son interacted with the staff, listening carefully, encouraging ideas, and always treating everyone with respect. She realized that this was more than just a job to him. It was a responsibility, a chance to make a difference. That evening, as the family gathered around the dinner table, the mother shared stories from her own past. She talked about the struggle she had faced growing up, the work she had done to support her family, and the lessons she had learned about strength and kindness. Her grandchildren listened intently, eyes wide with curiosity. They asked questions, wanting to know more about their grandmother's journey. She smiled softly, telling them that life would not always be easy, but that courage and respect would carry them through. Her son nodded in agreement. "And remember," he said, "never let anyone tell you who you can or cannot be. You define your own path." Those words lingered in the room, filling the space with hope. Over the next few days, the mother began to see things from a new perspective. She realized that her son's success was not just about what he had achieved, but about how he used that success to lift others up. She thought about the times when she had been overlooked or underestimated. Now she saw those moments in a different light. They were not the end of the story, but part of a greater journey, a journey that her son was continuing. One afternoon, as they walked through a nearby park, her son shared more about his plans for the company. He spoke passionately about creating a place where everyone felt valued and respected, where people from all backgrounds could find opportunity. She listened, heart swelling with pride. It was clear to her that the values she had taught him, honesty, hard work, and kindness, were the foundation of everything he did. As the visit came to an end, she felt a mixture of emotions: sadness to leave the warmth of family and new experiences, gratitude for the time they had shared, and hope for the future. Her son promised to visit soon, and to keep building a company that reflected the best of who they were. On the day she left, as she waited for her flight, she thought back to the moment at the airport, when she had been asked to prove her place on the plane. She smiled quietly to herself, knowing that was just one small step in a much larger story. A story of love, respect, and the power of believing in yourself and each other. And as the plane lifted into the sky once again, she looked out the window with a heart full of hope, ready for whatever came next. After returning home, the mother spent many quiet moments thinking about everything she had experienced during her visit. The trip had opened a new chapter in her life, a chapter filled with hope, respect, and new possibilities. But it also reminded her of the long road she had traveled, the struggles she had faced, and the dreams she had kept alive despite the challenges. She found herself reflecting on the simple things that had made the biggest difference. Like the small acts of kindness she had seen, the respect her son showed to others, and the way people could rise when someone believed in them. She realized that success wasn't just about money or titles. It was about how you treated people along the way. At home, she began sharing these lessons with her community, neighbors, friends, and even strangers she met in the market or at the local church. She spoke softly but clearly about the power of respect and hard work, about the importance of kindness, and about never giving up on your dreams. People listened. They saw the light in her eyes. They heard the quiet strength in her voice. One afternoon, she sat with a group of young women from her neighborhood. They were gathered in the small community center, talking about their own hopes and fears. Some had dreams of school or jobs. Others worried about the difficulties they faced: lack of money, lack of support, or feeling invisible. She told them her story, how she had worked hard, faced rejection, and kept going, how her son had started at the bottom and never gave up, and how today he was leading a company that cared about people like them. Her words inspired hope. The women asked questions, shared their own stories, and made plans to support each other. It was a small moment, but it felt big, like a seed being planted that could grow into something strong. At the same time, her son was working hard too, leading the airline through challenges, making decisions that would shape the future. But he never forgot his roots. He made sure the company offered training programs for young people from underrepresented communities. He pushed for fair pay and safe working conditions, and he encouraged a culture where everyone's voice mattered. He often thought about his mother, the lessons she had taught him, the sacrifices she had made, and the quiet strength she had shown. One day, he arranged a special event at the company, a family and community day. Employees were invited to bring their families, and local community members were welcomed too. There were tours, speeches, and activities for children. His mother was there, sitting proudly in the front row as he spoke to the crowd. He talked about the importance of respect, opportunity, and giving back. He thanked his mother for being his greatest teacher and inspiration. Afterwards, many people came up to speak with her. They thanked her for her wisdom, shared their own stories, and asked for advice. She smiled, feeling the warmth of connection and purpose. Through these moments, both mother and son realized something important, that their story was bigger than themselves. It was about building bridges, creating chances, and lifting each other up. At home, the mother kept a small journal. She wrote about the people she met, the lessons she learned, and the hope she felt for the future. Sometimes she wrote letters to her grandchildren, telling them stories of courage and kindness. Her son, meanwhile, balanced the pressures of leadership with moments of quiet reflection. He often called his mother, asking for her advice or simply sharing a laugh. Their bond grew stronger, rooted in love and shared values. One evening, as the sun set behind the hills, they sat together on the porch, watching the sky change colors. The mother took her son's hand and said, "No matter how far you go, never forget where you started." He nodded. "I won't. Because that's where my strength comes from." In those quiet moments, they understood that true success was not about titles or wealth. It was about heart, about family, about making the world a little better than you found it. And so, their journey continued, filled with challenges, yes, but also with hope, respect, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. Life had a way of moving fast, but for the mother and her son, every moment carried meaning. After the family and community day event, things at the company and at home felt different. There was a new energy in the air, a feeling that something important was unfolding, not just for them but for everyone around them. The mother noticed how people in their neighborhood started to smile more, greet each other warmly, and offer help without being asked. It was as if her story and the story of her son's company had given others hope, that no matter their background or struggles, they could dream bigger and reach higher. One afternoon, she sat quietly on her porch watching children play in the street. Their laughter reminded her of the many years she had spent raising her own family. She thought about the challenges she had faced, the sacrifices she made, and the moments she wished she could have done better. But now, looking back, she felt peace. Her journey had not been easy, but it had been real and full of love. Her son called her that evening, his voice warm and full of excitement. He told her about a new program the company was launching, a mentorship plan for young people who wanted to work in aviation or business. The goal was to help those who might not have had the same opportunities to get training, support, and guidance. She smiled as she listened. This was exactly the kind of change she had hoped for, the kind that opened doors and gave people a chance to shine. "Mom," he said, "I want to make sure that no one feels like they don't belong, like you did on that flight. Everyone deserves a chance to succeed." Her heart swelled with pride. Her son was not only leading a company, he was building a community, a family that extended far beyond their own home. Over the next weeks, she visited local schools and community centers, sharing her story and encouraging young people to believe in themselves. She met students who dreamed of becoming pilots, engineers, or business leaders. She told them that their dreams were valid and that hard work and kindness would carry them far. One young woman told her, "It's hard sometimes. People don't always believe in me." The mother looked at her kindly and said, "Then you must believe in yourself even more. Remember, every great journey begins with one small step. Keep moving forward." Her words sparked hope. The young woman smiled, feeling a little stronger than before. At the company, the mentorship program began to take shape. Employees volunteered to guide and support the new participants. Workshops were held, where people could learn skills, ask questions, and find encouragement. Her son visited these sessions often, sitting quietly in the back, listening to the stories and struggles of those who came. He knew that success wasn't just about running an airline. It was about building a future where everyone had a chance to fly. One day, as the mother and son sat together, she asked him what kept him going during the hardest times. He thought for a moment and said, "It's the people, the ones who believe in me, the ones I want to help, and of course you. You showed me how to be strong." She reached out and held his hand. "And you showed me that dreams do come true even when the road is tough." Their bond was unbreakable, woven from years of love, struggle, and hope. As the seasons changed, their story inspired others to share their own journeys. Neighbors who once kept to themselves began organizing community projects. Young people formed clubs to support each other's goals. The neighborhood felt alive with possibility. The mother felt grateful to be part of something bigger than herself. She realized that her son's success was not just his alone. It belonged to all of them, to every person who dared to dream and work hard. One evening, as they watched the stars twinkle in the clear sky, her son said quietly, "This is only the beginning. There's so much more we can do." She smiled, feeling the warmth of hope and the power of family. Together, they were building a future where everyone could soar. Time passed, and the mother and her son continued to build not just a company or a family, but a community of hope and respect. The story that began with a simple flight and a quiet moment of refusal had grown into something much larger. It had become a symbol, a reminder that no matter where you start with courage and kindness, you can change your world. The mother often thought about that day at the airport when she was asked to give up her first-class seat. It had been confusing, painful even. But when her son stepped in and said, "I run this airline," everything changed. Not because of power or money, but because he stood up for what was right, for respect, fairness, and dignity. That moment had not just been about a seat on a plane. It had been about breaking barriers, challenging old ideas, and showing that everyone deserves to be seen and heard. As the years went by, the airline grew under her son's leadership, but so did its heart. It became known for how it treated its employees and customers, with kindness, fairness, and respect. The mentorship programs expanded, helping more young people find their path. The company sponsored scholarships and community projects, giving back in ways that mattered. The mother was proud of all this, but what made her happiest was seeing how people's lives were changing. Young men and women who once doubted themselves now dreamed bigger. Families who struggled found new opportunities, and in every story she saw a piece of her own journey, the strength to keep going, the hope that never faded. At home, the family continued to grow closer. The grandchildren loved to hear stories about their grandmother's life, stories of courage, hard work, and love. She told them about the importance of respect and kindness, lessons she hoped they would carry with them forever. One day, while sitting on the porch with her son, she said quietly, "You know, it's not just about what we have now. It's about what we give back. That's what truly lasts." He nodded, smiling. "You taught me that, and I want to keep passing it on." Their connection was deeper than ever, a partnership built on love, respect, and shared dreams. The mother also became a mentor in her own right. She visited schools, community centers, and churches, speaking to anyone who would listen. Her message was simple: believe in yourself, work hard, treat others with kindness, and never give up. She told them about her son, but more importantly, she told them about the values that had guided both of them: humility, respect, and the courage to stand up for what is right. Her words touched many hearts. People who had felt invisible began to see themselves in a new light. They felt inspired to take small steps toward their dreams, knowing they were not alone. One evening, at a community gathering, a young man approached her and said, "Your story gave me hope when I thought there was none." "Thank you," she smiled warmly. "Remember, hope is the first step to change. Keep it alive." Her journey had come full circle, from a quiet woman who had faced many challenges to a respected voice in her community. Her son continued to lead with the same heart. Every decision he made was guided by the lessons his mother had taught him. He worked tirelessly to create a company that cared, not just about profits, but about people's lives. One day, as they walked through the company's hangars, he said, "Mom, this is more than a business. It's a family, and I want everyone to feel that way." She looked around at the planes ready to take off and the employees working with purpose. She felt a deep sense of peace. The dream she had held on to for so long was now a reality where respect, opportunity, and kindness soared as high as the airplanes above. In the quiet moments, she often thought about the future, the generations yet to come, the dreams yet to be fulfilled, and the world they were helping to shape. She knew there would still be challenges ahead. Life always has them. But she also knew that with love, respect, and courage, anything was possible, and so the story continued. A story of a mother's strength, a son's leadership, and a family's love that changed not just their lives, but the lives of many. It was a story about believing in yourself, standing up for what is right, and never forgetting where you came from. Because sometimes, the smallest moments, like refusing to give up a seat or speaking a few simple words, can change everything. And that is how they soared.